oral task, teaching practice 2, reported speech. Mr. Bidaran is going to be playing the part of the student in this evening class. So Bidaran, in this lesson, we will develop your grammar skills and we'll learn how to make reported speech. So let's get started. What do we see here? There's a lady at the desk. There's a man called Dave. And the lady at the desk says to Dave something. What does she say?
You can wait in the staff room.
Yes, you can wait in the staff room, Dave. And Dave walks a little bit and this time says to Christine what this lady at the desk said to Dave. And Dave says this time to Christine,
the lady at the desk told me that we could wait in the staff room.
That's a reported speech. Why? Because the lady at the desk said something to Dave, and Dave, this was a direct speech, right? This was a direct speech, and Dave, this lady at the desk, reported to Christine and said, the lady at the desk told me that we could wait in the staff room. But what changes from direct form into indirect form? Change number 1 is we add reporting word. Sometimes we can use tell, sometimes we can use say. This time tell. And what we add? The lady at the desk told me. And subject you becomes we, okay? Can, this time is modal, not the tense. The modal becomes one past form could, and therefore 3 changes. We'll add reported verb, subject or pronoun changes, tense or in this situation modal changes and becomes one past. Okay. So at the end of this lesson, Bidaran, you will be able to make reported speech and you'll learn how to build it and be able to apply your grammar skills in this situation, reported speech, into your real life. Okay, what changes in reported speech? Let's see it again. There is Mike, there is Lisa. Mike says to Lisa, what does he says to Lisa?
I will call you tomorrow.
Says, I will call you tomorrow. And Lisa calls and says to third person, Katie, what does Lisa says to Katie?
He said that he would call me the next day.
He said that. Who is he? Mike. That he would call me. Why? Because Mike said, I will call you. So tomorrow is the next day. Let's see what changes from direct speech to indirect speech. Change number 1, we add reported verb, say, but one past, because one past has to be there. He said that, I becomes
He
will becomes
would
one past would, and you becomes
me.
of course, and time expression tomorrow becomes in
The next
indirect speech
the next day.
the next day. Perfect. Okay, so let's see another example. This is a direct speech of Lucia. Lucia says,
My father works for a fish company.
my father works for a fish company. In indirect speech, Lucia said that her father worked, one past, for a fish company. That's an indirect form. So what exactly changes? Lucia said, that's an important word, and one past word of say, that is optional. You can say or you can't say. You might not say. My father becomes her father. Here subject changes. Works becomes one past work. Therefore tense changes. And let's see another example. Lucia says directly,
I can go to the party tonight.
I can go to the party tonight. An indirect speech, she says,
She told me that she could go to the party that night.
okay, what changes? Lucia, she is the saying. We have to add important word and one past. That is optional. Here, look, subject changes. I becomes she. Can model becomes could, one past. And the time expression changes to tonight, that day. Okay, so what changes do we make in building reported speech? There are 5 changes. Change number 1, we add reported word. Change number 2, subject changes. Change number 3, the tense or 4, model changes its tense because they make it to one past. And time expression changes, therefore there are 5 changes. But in this evening class, we'll focus more on change number 1, reported verb, and change number 5, time expression changes. Okay, let's see reported verbs in reported speech. There are, of course, many more verbs of reported verbs, but there are mainly 3 ones that we're gonna take care in this evening class. Say, tell, and ask. Okay, let's see, go over them, look over them one by one. Let's see the difference in usage between say and tell, because there's a slight difference between them. You say something, you say to someone something, and you tell someone something. Can you see the difference? Say to someone, tell someone something. Let's make an example. For this one, for say something. David says,
It's hot.
okay. In indirect form,
He
he
said,
said that, one past, it was hot. What about this? David says to me, it's in quotation mark, it's hot. Okay, in indirect form,
He said to me
that.
it was hot.
Why? Because I gotta make it to one past. Okay? David,
Tells me it is hot.
what is the difference? David says to me, but here, David tells me. It's hot. And in the indirect form,
He told me
that
it
it was hot. So one past again. Okay, so let's see the important word, ask. How are we going to use with yes or no questions? In indirect form, if someone asks us something, we're going to use either if or whether or not. Both are correct. If or whether or not. But if someone is asking us with who questions, like where, who, how many, then you ask someone using the same. There's no change. The same who question. If he asks where, you're gonna put it in indirect form, where again, and we'll go on. Let's make an example. For yes or no question, David asks, is the weather hot? In indirect form, David asked me if, I put if, the weather was hot. I making it affirmative and take one pass. Or he asked me whether or not the weather was hot. For who questions, example, Jamie asks,
How long were you waiting for us?
how long were you waiting for us? While we're turning it into indirect form, Jamie this time not asks because it's not a yes or no questions. It's who questions. This time I say Jamie wanted to know. And the same, how long
Had the
were becomes simple past tense becomes simple past tense. I take the one past form of past tense and becomes past perfect and had been waiting for it. Okay. Reported verbs in reported speech. Let's make practice on reported verb. Okay. For yes or no questions. Chris asks,
Will you be at my birthday party?
will you be at my birthday party? And while I'm making an indirect form, Chris,
Chris asked
yes, ask me if
I
one pass
would
would
be at my
perfect. Or whether or not, use whether or not.
Chris asked me that whether or not
Perfect.
I would be
Perfect. Okay. Chris asked me whether or not I would be at this person. Okay. This time let's make an example for who questions. Okay. John asks,
Where did you go last summer?
where did you go last summer? Be careful, there's a time expression here. Okay. Okay. John asks, where did you go last summer?
He asked me where
Yes.
I
One pass.
went
Where I had
at
gone.
last
Last becomes the previous summer. Okay, perfect. So let's pass to time expressions. There are 3 time expressions. There are more time expressions, but mainly, basically, today, yesterday, and we'll focus on tomorrow. What are the indirect form of these? Today becomes that day. There was an example we did. Yesterday becomes the day before, or it's not written here, the previous day. Tomorrow becomes the next day or the following day. Okay, let's make some practice on the time expression. Okay, Emily says directly, our teacher will go to Leipzig tomorrow. In indirect form, reported form, Emily past reported verb said, optional, that our teacher becomes the same, will becomes
and the
one past, will becomes one past, would go to Leipzig, tomorrow becomes
the next
the following day. Okay? In indirect form. Example number 2. Helen says,
I was writing a letter yesterday.
okay, be careful with yesterday time expression here. Helen told me that I becomes,
She
yes, Helen is a she. Was writing a letter becomes one past.
had been
Had been writing letter. And yesterday becomes
the Previous.
Yes, previous day. Perfect. One last example. This time Michael says, I'm going to read a book today. And in indirect form, Michael said to me, that,
he
yes, because he says I becomes he,
was
yes, am going to is going to become, was going to read a book. Today becomes
the
that day
that day.
in direct form. Okay, let's make some activity. In this reported speech activity, student, you, interviews the teacher, ask me questions, and then the teacher reports to the questions and answers from the student, from you to another, and will change, vice versa. And you see that flower?
Ah, yes.
Let's make that flower, give me a name, Michael or Dave. Let's make it Dave, okay? So this time, you will ask me these questions directly, and I will indirect them to the flower named David. Okay.
Are you happy today?
David Bediran asked me if I was happy that day. Okay, did you understand? 2.
Do you support a football team?
David Bediran asked me whether or not I had, I supported, because I take one pass, a football team.
How much water do you drink a day?
Okay, David Bediran wanted to know this time. Why? Because it's not a yes or no question, it's a who questions. Okay, Bediran wanted to know how much is the same, how much water I'll make one pass, I drank, because it's simple present tense, I'll make it one pass, past tense, a day. Okay, that's my turn now to ask questions. Abidra, are you sick today?
David, my teacher asked me.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
sick that day.
Today becomes, yes, today becomes that day. Thank you. Bedran, do you go to gym?
David, my teacher asked me. I went
Ask me
asked me that.
if or whether or not you gotta use.
Sorry.
Choose one.
My teacher asked me if I went to
Yes.
gym.
Yes, perfect. If I went to gym. Bedran, one last question. How far do you walk every day?
David, my teacher wanted to
Perfect.
know.
This time, not a yes no question. Wanted to know how far.
I walked.
Perfect. I walk every day. Perfect. Okay, so let's make a class exercise. That's a kind of writing exercise as well. The teacher, I am gonna ask you to write on the board. Okay?
Okay.
And you write what I say or what I ask actually, or say, and I'll ask you to write first the direct form and indirect form. Okay, there you go. That's yours, and the whiteboard is yours as well. Okay, Viziran. Yes, direct form. Are you feeling happy today? Yes, that's a great one. Are you feeling happy today? Now you change it into indirect, report form. Yes. Yes, because it's a yes or no question. he asked me if yes. If you make past, what happens? Are becomes are was feeling, and today becomes
that day.
perfect that day. Okay. This time it was a yes or no question. This time, okay, who questions? Let's make it who questions. Vedran, where do you work?
Where
That's a direct sentence. Where do you work?
do you
Work. Okay.
he wanted
Yes, he or my teacher wanted to know.
to know
Yes.
where
Where? Subject changes?
I
Yes. Where I?
worked.
Yes. One past four. Where I worked. Full stop. That's it. Okay?
Okay.
Is there any question?
No.
No question.
There is a no question.
Okay. So thank you for listening.